So, welcome to Propeligent Growth Podcast. I'm Jamal Hirani, founder of Propeligent. Now, joining me today is Stephen Rothberg. Now, Stephen is a founder and chief visionary officer of College Recruiter. So, welcome, Steve. Really delighted, and thank you very much for joining this.
Jamal, looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. I want to just go back to a bit of your origin story, Stephen, which I find really interesting. You've got quite an incredible entrepreneurial journey from selling candy in fifth grade to running fantasy hockey leagues in college to founding College Recruiter. So take me back to that moment after grad school when you decided to channel that entrepreneurial energy into what became College Recruiter, and what problem did you see that others were missing?
Yeah, great question. So I went to grad school here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I've now lived most of my life. And before moving here, I had grown up in Winnipeg, Canada, basically dead center in Canada, literally the coldest city in the world with more than 500,000 residents. So I like to joke that I'm probably the only person in the history of Minnesota to ever have moved here for the weather. So I graduated from law school, from the University of Minnesota Law School, and I was working as a lawyer in my first year. A friend of mine in Winnipeg asked me if I wanted to join his small business as his partner. And I had started that small business in college, basically gave it to this guy and a friend of his for a pittance. It was more just almost like a thank you gift from them to me to introduce, so that I could introduce them to customers, vendors, et cetera. And when I went to law school, my intention was never to be a lawyer for my entire career. What I wanted to do is to go and practice law for 4, 5, 6 years, get the training, get the experience, and then get out and either start my own small business or join somebody else's. The bug was deep. It burrowed well into me. And so as I'm talking to my friend, I realized that where my passion really was, again, was small business. I started to think and really be inspired about, be excited about that, much more so than slogging through, another day, week, year, 5 years as a lawyer. So
Sure.
While I was working as a lawyer full time, my friend and I tried to work out some kind of financial deal that would work for him and work for me, and we just could not create a win-win. So we're still excellent friends, and he kind of went his own way, had no issues with me, essentially starting the same business here in Minneapolis. So he had no intention of expanding to the US unless I was his partner. So it was no problem for him if I started a similar business in Minneapolis. So I completed the year as a lawyer, and then started to get contracts in place from potential customers, or at that point existing customers, and got the business started. And that business dates back to November 1st, 1991. So yes, I'm that old. It ended up evolving, never pivoted, but it ended up evolving into the business that I still am run today.
What made you believe that internet-based solution was the answer in those early days?
Yeah, so not at all. So the first few years, there really wasn't an internet. So, 1991, even if you were technically on the internet, you probably did not know it. There were not web browsers. So people were using email, Usenet groups, stuff like that. I had a dial-up modem that rocked at 58.8 kilobytes per second or something like that. I could send a Word document across town in under an hour. It was fantastic.
Yeah, perfect.
And but in the first website that we built went live was in 1996. So it was right after Yahoo went live, 2 years before Google. And I'd love to sit here and say that I had a crystal ball, I was super smart, I could see the future, and absolutely not. It was designed to be the sizzle that would help sell the steak. We were publishing an employment magazine with ads in it from employers. And what we literally did is we cut out with scissors the quarter, half, and full page ads, put them onto a flatbed scanner, scanned them, created images, JPEGs, uploaded those to the website, and you could either search for jobs by category, like engineering or retail, or by location, like Minnesota, Illinois.
Yeah,
but you
right,
could
okay.
not search for retail jobs because it was all static HTML. There wasn't a database behind it.
Yes,
It was definitely quite rudimentary.
Pioneering there, right? It's fun. That's how things work. I mean, talking about evolution, College Recruiter now serves 12 million candidates and works with Fortune 1000 companies. I mean, that's massive scale. What were the 2 to 3 pivotal operational decisions you made that allow you to go from a startup to serving clients at that scale?
One came in 1999, 2000. So it was still fairly early in the business. I guess the business was about 9-10 years old. The website was about 4 years old. By that point, it had become obvious that the internet was not a fad. And this was a much better way for people to access almost any kind of information than a quarterly print magazine. And so we gradually were shutting down the print publications. They were profitable. The revenue was growing, but that's not where the future of the business was. And every hour, every day that we spent building the print side of the business took away an hour, took away a day from the online side of the business where the growth really was. It was kind of fortuitous because right after we did that, that's when the dot-com bubble burst. And so businesses ground to a halt. Although we had moved into the tech world, what it really did though was it really reduced our expenses and our risk. So it probably allowed us to make it through that little recession without any real harm. The next pivotal moment came several years later. I think it was roughly 2003. And I got cold called by a guy that I knew in the industry, in the online recruitment industry, who said that I should take our website and move it into a network that the company that he was working for was building. It was called Artemis HR, became Beyond.com, and now it's Next, NEXXT. They were building a network of different career sites. They started off with dozens, they became then hundreds, and then literally tens of thousands. And the idea was they would all kind of share job postings, share traffic.
Right.
Rising tide lifts all ships, if you want to use an analogy. They handled the technology. They handled building the database, handling the SEO, web servers. And it allowed our tiny little organization of just a handful of people to focus completely on our customers, both the job seekers and the employers, and servicing them without having to worry about the technology side of the business. That, while we were there for just a few years, our revenues increased by about tenfold. It freed up the time to actually go out and win bigger contracts. And then the last one, I think you asked for a few. The last one was about 10, 11 years ago now. I think it was 2014. Two of our largest customers, one was Aflac, a big insurance company, and American listeners will be familiar. They're the ones with the duck that goes Aflac. And the other one was Uber, which practically everybody knows now. Both of them were buying from us the largest annual job posting package that we had available. It was kind of an unlimited all you can eat, $12,500 a year. Within a week, totally coincidentally, they both came and they said something to the effect of, if we gave you 4 times as much money, could you deliver to us 4 times as many candidates? And, as an entrepreneur, one of the lessons that I've learned is that when you have a customer asking to give you money, you should find a way of making that happen. And so we did, and we created a cost per click and a cost per application package.
Okay. Which makes sense. Okay, I mean, part of this podcast is to talk about kind of operational efficiencies and innovation over, and particularly with the life cycle of your business, which is really great. So one of the things I was really quite interested in and quite impressed with is your 5-step process. You've developed what you call the college recruiter difference, if I'm right, if I remember. A 5-step discovery process, from discovery through reporting. And most companies, they struggle to systemize their operations like this. So how did you identify that this specific process was what would drive better outcomes? And what role has technology played in making that repeatable at scale?
Yeah, that's interesting. So where that came from, the college recruiter difference, is I think about 7-8 years ago. My wife, who's our CEO, heard
wise move, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm second fiddle at home and at work, so it works out brilliantly. And so she had heard through a friend of something called the Entrepreneur's Operating System, EOS. And it's kind of a framework for managing your business, how to run meetings, how to hire people, how to set goals, or what it calls rocks, et cetera. And one of the things that EOS talks about is having that named system. It's not just to say, it's not enough under EOS just to have a system like that. You actually give it a name. You publicize it internally and externally, which is how you saw it. When your customers are talking to you and they want to understand kind of how do you onboard them? How do you get back to them with results? Do you get back to them with results? What's the whole process? Then you can literally send them a diagram, like a flow chart, and you show it to them. It's really hard to send a customer a simple flow chart of how you're going to work with them over an extended period of time and not instill more confidence in them. They're going to see that and they're going to say, these guys really have thought through the process. I feel more comfortable doing business with them. I think my risk is going to be lower of them messing up. Now, we could still mess up, but when we do, the process has that taken into account. The technology part of it is where that really comes into play is automating what shouldn't be done manually. When we build a new product, when we build a new process, we tend to do it in kind of a minimally viable product aspect where we're being very inefficient, but we're figuring out the process and really getting rid of the unnecessary edge cases that you might have one customer yelling and screaming about something, but 100 other customers, your 100 other customers could care less. We have to be continually careful about not building out something that's going to impact all 101 customers to make one a tiny bit happier, and you make another 100 very unhappy. That written process that we share with the customers that we then automate the reporting has really helped us to see that. So, for example, we found early on that it was a shock to a lot of our customers that we would send them automated reports on the first of every month that essentially said, here are all the different job ads that you ran with us last month. For each of those job ads, here's how many people looked at them. Here's how many people clicked the apply button. Here's how many people applied. Because almost none of our competitors were giving them access to that data at all, let alone proactively. It gave us a little bit of fear, because what if the results weren't good?
Sure.
Are we going to be proactively going to our customers and saying to them, we're a poor vendor? And I felt like that risk was worth the reward, because it would also mean it would help us identify what kinds of customers we did well for, what kinds of customers we did poorly for. We could stop pursuing that second group and really focus on the group that where we added the most value.
From the customer's point of view, they're getting transparency and trust being built with you, because you're going, look, hey, this is all your results, this is what your return you're getting on your investment. And some people are recruiting, maybe the job advert wasn't great, or whatever. It could, but at least it gives them a talking point of trusting you. But speaking of technology, AI is obviously the hot topic in every industry
Absolutely.
right now. And from your position of building College Recruiter and co-hosting multiple recruitment podcasts, how is AI actually impacting the recruitment space? Not the hype, but the real practical changes that you're seeing.
Massively. I think it's one of the industries that has been impacted the most because so much of it is knowledge based, and so much of recruiting has always been about employers striving for more efficiency. And quite frankly, I think the greatest promise of AI that I see in the recruitment space is not with efficiency. It's with effectiveness. It's with doing your job better, not doing your job cheaper. Now, if you can do both, great. But where I see the biggest impact right now is, unfortunately, is in an effort mostly by employers, some on the candidate side, at trying very hard to dehumanize the other side. And employers for decades have been using automation, technology of some type, to distance their recruiters and their hiring managers from the candidates, putting up a whole bunch of barriers, hiding behind walls, not communicating with candidates, saying to candidates that, you have to go online, you have to apply here, you have to upload this document to go through this 40-minute process, and this assessment that might ask you, if you were a tree, what kind of a tree would you be? I mean, just nonsensical stuff that has nothing to do with you being able to do the job or not. And then employers using a lot of that so-called data to make very arbitrary hiring decisions, but justifying it by saying the computer told me to do it. And I think what we're starting to see is that some of the better employers are seeing a real opportunity in the marketplace to kind of grab the best talent that these automated systems are not doing a good job of identifying. And a lot of the biggest companies, I mean, if you have more than 400 or 500 employees, and you're in an industrialized country like the UK, the US, Canada, Germany, etc., you're almost certainly using something called an applicant tracking system, an ATS, kind of manages the applicant flow. And almost all of those now offer the employer the option of the ATS automatically ranking or scoring or matching the job seeker to a particular job ad. And almost all of those, pardon my French, it's BS. The tech does not do a good job. And it's a lot of the same issues that we hear with like LLMs hallucinating. So some of it works, some of it doesn't. But no employer can say that when one resume or CV is ranked better than another, that it's being correctly ranked that way, because they only hire one of those people. They never hire both. So you don't ever really know if the lower one would have worked out well or not. There are employers who are bringing a lot more humans back into the process and using technology in a better way, like scheduling interviews, providing good, transparent feedback, taking notes, things along those lines, so that recruiters can actually get onto Zoom or in person with candidates. That excites me.
No, that is. Do you think candidates are using AI to apply for jobs differently than they used to? Yeah.
So especially the cohort that we work with, early careers, those with 0 to 5 years experience, they skew younger, in their 20s is pretty typical. They're going to be the ones generally the most comfortable with technology, and a very large percentage, probably 90%, are taking their resumes or CVs and using some kind of AI. It could be Claude, it could be Gemini, it could be ChatGPT, and basically uploading their resume and saying to the AI, improve this. It might correct spelling mistakes. It might correct grammatical mistakes. It might make the language more direct, less passive. But one of the things that it's doing that really, really upsets a lot of employers is it is rewriting the resume or CV to better match the job posting ad.
Right.
Now, it's kind of ironic because employers forever have been complaining about how poorly written resumes are, that it's hard for them to understand why this person thinks they're well qualified for this job. Now they're getting that, and they're complaining that they can't differentiate between different candidates because they all look the same. It's a little bit like the dog chasing the school bus. You catch
Yes.
it, now what? And
Yes.
I do think it's a problem, but I think the reality is probably forever, a lot more candidates have been well qualified for roles they've been applying to, and the employers just didn't realize it because the
Right.
resumes or CVs were poorly written. Now
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
mostly well written. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's a good problem to have, actually.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, but how kind of your Fortune 1000 clients, how are they changing their hiring process because of AI? So, like you said, suddenly they're getting well-written CVs or resumes and so on coming through. So what are they in their processes?
Yeah, a lot more of them are using the screening, matching, sorting kind of software where they're having an AI system do the job of what a recruiter used to and probably should still be doing, and that is like laying eyes on that document to try to see, is this person well qualified? It used to be if you got 100 applications, maybe 20 of them looked to be good, so you'd interview those 20. And then you'd maybe narrow that down to 5 or maybe even 3 finalists. Now, if you get 100 applications, probably 80 of them look good. And so the recruiters are being overloaded. And so they're dropping that work into the lap of the AI to narrow it to 20. But I think a lot of this distinctions it's drawing between the 80th best and the 20th best are arbitrary at best. So a lot of employers, recruiters, hiring managers are using technology to make their workload manageable, but in the process, they're losing a lot of really well-qualified candidates. What I think they should be doing is, if they're now getting 80 good applications and what they really wanted was 20, is that they should be using automation in their ATS to automatically turn off their ad once they hit 30 applications, 40 applications, whatever that number is. So don't allow yourself to get overloaded to begin with. Be more proactive.
Be in control of that. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So how is College Recruiter itself adopting to or leveraging AI? I mean, are there specific areas where you've implemented AI into your 5-step process, and what results have you seen, or areas where you've deliberately chosen not to use AI?
Yeah, we've been using AI through vendor relationships like Google since I think about 2017. So Google released a suite of hiring products. They had an ATS that they later killed. They licensed their search technology. They used to call it Google Job Discovery. Now it's Google Cloud. So if you were to come to College Recruiter and run a job search, that's powered by Google, and Google is using AI to match you up with job postings that it thinks is going to be of interest to you. It's not, you're not uploading a resume or CV, you're typing in keywords. Server San Francisco. Does that mean server like a waiter? Or does that mean server like somebody who deals with like computer hardware? And context matters. It can see from other jobs that you're looking at that, no, actually you're a computer hardware guy. You're not somebody who's working, in a Chipotle restaurant. So we've been using it since early on. We made the decision deliberately not to use AI to rank or sort or shortlist candidates that are interested in working for the employers that are advertising their jobs. And in hindsight, thank goodness. One is the tech. I don't think the tech actually works well, as we've discussed. And the second is it seems like we are on the verge of a litigation explosion in that area. Last fall, a guy named Mobley sued Workday for illegally discriminating against him. He's a black man, applied to a whole bunch of jobs through Workday, and was quickly rejected for all of them. We'll see once the trial happens, if there's a trial, whether that was true, what kind of damages there might be. But now it's a class action lawsuit. And I really think that Workday is the first of many HR tech vendors that are going to be in the crosshairs.
Right. Wow. Okay. So just going back to College Recruiter, what has been the kind of biggest challenge in implementing AI operationally, and how do you balance, particularly for your business, automation with the consultation and the human expertise that differentiates you from your competitors?
Yeah. The cost of it is certainly a factor. We're bootstrapped. We're fairly small. We can't just throw millions of dollars at a problem and kind of hope that it works. We're definitely not against AI, but we're also not throwing caution to the wind and just saying, well, throw AI onto it and all of our problems will be solved. And I think, like you've seen probably in the VC world, there are definitely a lot of companies out there that have a lot of money and get really stupid with it. And hopefully we haven't done too much of that. We do use AI sort of internally to do things like we have an ad campaign. A client is advertising a bunch of jobs with us. What kinds of candidates, how do we kind of get those jobs in front of the right candidates so that those candidates are the most likely to apply? It's a way of delivering more value to our customers. They get more for less money. It's amazing how a civil engineering job in Kansas needs to be marketed very differently than a civil engineering job in Florida, for example. And the AI at scale can help you figure that out. If you're looking at one job posting ad and looking at a stack of resumes or CVs, PDFs, whatever, it's actually not all that hard for a human to say these ones are probably a good fit. But at any given time, we have 3 to 5 million postings on our site. We get about a million new ones a day. We connect about 1 million candidates a month. So scale matters. And one of the things that AI is really good at doing in our industry is sort of seeing some of those hidden connections. Things that might not be obvious to a human when they have very little time.
Yeah, I mean, what AI is good at is pattern recognition and things that you can't see, and it be able to really kind of, and also the speed that it operates at, so that you can actually see that. But I mean, beyond AI, when you look at high volume hiring, which is your speciality, what are the biggest operational efficiency mistakes you see companies making? I mean, what's the one thing that separates companies that do this to those that struggle?
It's the dehumanization. It's companies who think that by bringing AI into the recruitment process, I'm talking about employers specifically, could be staffing companies, agencies, et cetera, but they're acting on behalf of the employer. And there has definitely been this continual push in HR for decades to reduce costs. Most companies, most employers look at HR as a cost center. And we can debate whether it's true or not, why it happened. It doesn't really matter. They're always looking to cut costs. And HR, in specifically talent acquisition, has not done a good job of making the case for hiring better instead of hiring cheaper. And so what a lot of companies have done is that they've used AI to replace initial touch points with the candidates. Instead of having humans do a screening interview, they'll have an asynchronous video interviewing process that candidates despise. And employers don't know how many candidates they're losing because those candidates never applied to begin with. They don't know how well those systems are actually working because all they can really measure is the productivity of the people they've hired, not the productivity that they lost from the people that they didn't hire. And Amazon probably does a better job of this, talk about a company that uses a lot of technology, because one thing that Amazon has is a lot of money. Another thing it has is a massive hiring need all the time in a lot of different locations. And so they can continually be running A/B tests. You know, we didn't used to rank this kind of candidate well as a package handler. Let's give it a shot in our Phoenix facility for the next 30 days and see what happens if we hire more people like that. And do we actually hire them? Do they start? Are they still with us after 30 days? How do they compare? And they can test that out. And then if it works, roll that out to their other locations. Other organizations that can do that are large retailers, Walmarts of the world, military. They hire a lot also. And so they can, you know, the US Army can go out and hire, like, enlist 2,000 people a year that maybe 2 years ago they wouldn't have. And let's see how it works. They did that several years ago with people who were overweight. They changed their weight standards and said, you know what, we can hire people who have a few extra pounds on them and just basically get them in shape before boot camp. And turned out those people actually made really good soldiers.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine. But also they're fit and healthy before they started boot camp. So there's a whole. I get that. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the job board space is crowded and competitive. How do you stay innovative when you're competing with massive players like LinkedIn and Indeed? I mean, what's your framework for deciding which innovations, you know, AI or otherwise, to pursue versus doubling down on operational excellence in what you already do?
Yeah. So one thing is that's key is that we do not try to compete with LinkedIn and Indeed. They're massive. They're fantastic at so much of what they've done. We don't need to win business from the biggest, most successful organizations in the industry in order for us to be successful. Right? If we want to be the next LinkedIn, then we need to do that. But we don't want to be the next LinkedIn. So we focus on our niche, early careers, meets global, meets programmatic, meets performance-based pricing. We're the only global early career site that uses programmatic technology, basically machine rules to determine what ads to run and what ads not to run, and performance-based pricing, cost per click, cost per application. We do that stuff really, really well. We don't try to do things as well or compete with players that are just going to win that battle. I'm a history nerd, and like if you go back and look at the best generals, they never, ever, ever wanted to fight a battle on their enemy's terms, right? If Napoleon came across an army that had better ground, he would change the battle plans, and he would move his army to another place where the opposing army had to come to him. So he got the high ground.
Got it.
That's what we do in our space, but without the muskets and cannons.
No, fair enough. I mean, you work with employers making hiring decisions and candidates making career decisions, right? Both sides need insights. So what operational metrics or data points do you obsess over that might surprise other business leaders? I mean, what tells you whether you're truly delivering value versus just going through the motions?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The one that stands above all of the others is ECPA, the effective cost per application.
Right.
It is by far the most common metric that almost every employer will use to determine whether their job board or other sourcing partner vendor is performing well. So if you spend $100 with us and we deliver 10 applications to you, whether you're paying per application or per click or just $100 flat fee per month, doesn't matter. You spend $100, we deliver 10 applications to you, the ECPA is $10. Another employer might spend $1,000 with Indeed and get 500 applications. They've got an eCPA of $2. In that scenario, Indeed is a better vendor than we are because they're delivering applications at an effective cost of $2. We're at $10.
Mm-hmm.
5, 6, 7 years ago, very, very few employers did that. Almost all of them would say, whichever job board or other vendor delivers the most applications is the best vendor. And they were not taking into account the cost of using that vendor. Now, almost all of them are. And we tend to be average or below average on that metric. Another thing that some of your listeners might not appreciate is, but you mentioned it a few minutes ago, Jamal, is that it's a very highly competitive space. There are a lot of players. And almost every employer of any size will advertise the same jobs in multiple places. And so it's not a winner takes all kind of industry. It's an industry where an employer might advertise that same job in 10, 20 different places. And so what you're fighting over is not whether you get a piece of the pie or the whole pie. You're fighting over how big a piece of the pie you get. Right. And that leads you in a really different place, right? Like Indeed can take 40% of the pie. LinkedIn can take 40% of the pie. And if we get the remaining 20%, we're going to be fat and happy.
Yes, I agree. Now look, so you've been quoted by everyone from NBC Nightly News to Wall Street Journal, named a top influencer by multiple organizations, and you co-founded multiple podcasts. So the level of thought leadership doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
How has that media presence impacted your business operationally? Does being a visible industry voice actually translate to better business outcomes?
Massively. And to be clear, I do not think it's the right strategy for every organization. It might be dependent on the organization. You might not have the right person to do it. I'm comfortable in that role. When you introduced me, you called me used the job title Chief Visionary Officer. That's another thing that comes from EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System. It's kind of like the chairman in a more traditional organization. One of my accountabilities is the thought leadership. It's doing podcasts like this. It's responding to inquiries from journalists, broadcast, print, online, whatever. We absolutely believe and in fact know that our reputation in the industry is much larger than the size of our organization. Some organizations, it's like, wow, I had no idea how big they were. In kind of like, they're much bigger than I thought they were. We're kind of the other way around. People would look at us and be like, oh, wow, you're much smaller than I thought you were.
You're punching way above.
Yes, that's a great way of saying it. Punching above our weight class. If for those people who like boxing, it's the smaller boxer is fighting the bigger boxer, and hopefully on even terms. Andre the Giant comes to mind with the bigger boxer or fighter anyway, wrestler. But the what that does for us operationally is it drives a lot more candidate traffic to our site because we have a lot more articles. The SEO's better. We're in so ChatGPT and Claude, et cetera, to a much more prominent extent than we would be if we were kind of quiet. And it also leads to far more leads for our sales team. So when we publish information, when we're quoted, when there's a podcast that goes out that gets a lot of views, we see a noticeable increase in the number of leads and the quality of those leads. And it's for a fairly small organization. It's a really inexpensive way for us to get our brand in front of our customers.
Completely. I mean, you've seen the recruitment industry, evolve dramatically from traditional methods to digital platforms, and now with AI entering the picture. From your kind of vantage point, building and scaling an internet business, what's the biggest shift happening right now in how companies should think about operational efficiency in recruitment? I mean, what are you adapting or changing in your own operations?
Interesting. Certainly AI and other technologies are more important in building an online recruitment site, HR tech site of some kind. A lot of the early players actually didn't use that much technology. Like, it wasn't all that difficult to set up a website, HTML, maybe some kind of database, Cold Fusion or whatever running in the background. But most of the work was actually still done very manually.
Right.
And in order to succeed now, if I was launching a new company now, I would definitely be looking for something that was hyper niche, something where you're not competing against the Indeeds and the Microsofts and the LinkedIns of the world, because I just feel like you're going to tend to lose that battle. But there are definitely new areas that are not being well served. I'll give you an example. There are a plethora of LLM-based sites that essentially offer career coaching. You can go to them and you can say, hey, I'm graduating in a year with a marketing degree from this university. What kind of a job should I look for? And they're kind of doing some counseling with you. A lot of those sites work really well. The advice that they give you is actually quite good. The problem with those sites is that almost none of them are monetizing that in any way. They haven't figured out a revenue model for that yet. So, if I was starting a recruitment site now, like one of those, I wouldn't be focused solely on, does the technology provide the job seeker with really good advice? That is important, but just as important is, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to hire and keep people on payroll? You got to be able to figure out where the revenue is going to come. It's not 1999 anymore. Traffic is not king. You also need revenues.
Yeah, I agree. You need revenue. I mean, you built this from the ground up and scaled it to serving millions. For business leaders listening who are trying to build operational efficiency into their own platforms or services, whether in recruitment or any other industry, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them about balancing growth and maintaining quality and efficiency?
I think underlying almost everything that I do, when I'm being successful, which is not always, that's for sure. But when I'm being successful and I kind of look back, I think what really underlines it is just it's baked into my DNA to be looking for win-win scenarios.
Right.
And we don't want to do a deal with a customer where we're going to be cashing a big check, knowing that we're going to be providing little to no value.
Right.
Same thing with our employees, same thing with our vendors. We try to treat our vendors just as we would treat our customers, because, hey, if we can save a lot of money on the expense side, that's if we save $1 on the expense side, that's $1 less on the revenue side that we need, and vice versa. So we don't think of customers as being more important than vendors or the other way around. And I think a lot of business leaders pay too much attention to the product at the expense of their customers, their vendors, their partners, their employees. You really need to balance all of those and really look for win-win scenarios. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like it was somewhat vague.
No. A win-win scenario, I think, is a very, very good piece of advice. So finally, I mean, what gets you excited about the future of College Recruiter? I mean, what are you focusing your energy on as a Chief Visionary Officer?
Expanding into other markets.
Right.
For most of the organization's existence, it was basically the US, a little bit in Canada. Several years ago, we had a number of customers, 4 or 5 years ago now, I think, we had a number of customers who were basically saying something to the effect of, you're helping us in the US, We have kind of the same openings in the UK. Can you help us there too? Canada, France, Germany, etc. And so we kind of been following our customers and adding new markets. What's starting to happen is we're starting to see some, like, a lot of traffic, candidate traffic, in markets where we have almost no customers. Singapore, for some reason, I don't know what's going on. I'm not unhappy about it, but we can see from our traffic that we have way more job seekers in Singapore than we should, based upon the number of job openings that we have on our site. We're not serving them well. So what's exciting to me is being able to go to our sales team and say, hey, if you can land some employers that have jobs in Singapore, we should be able to deliver really good value at very low cost instantly. We don't have to build both sides. The job board market is a double-sided marketplace. You have to have both the candidates and the employers.
Yes.
And fortunately, there are some markets like Singapore where we already have those candidates, and now we just have to land the employers. That's exciting to me.
Got it. Yeah, that is exciting. Brilliant. Listen, first of all, thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate your time today, and it's been super fascinating and interesting talking to you. For anyone interested in learning more about College Recruiter or connecting with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Well, I bet you every single one of your guests says LinkedIn, so I'll do that, but I'll also do another. So I'm Stephen Rothberg, StevenRothberg. There are only a few of us on LinkedIn. I'm the only one in the job board space, so hit me up there. But also shoot me an email, Stephen@collegerecruiter.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers.